Hi, this is Joe Green, head pastor of St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church located in Harrisburg, also the founder of the 19 movement, and I want to share a couple of thoughts with you. I'm just going to give you some information here. You can draw your own conclusions, especially this cancel culture or this time where people are getting banned for saying things that go against the narrative. Just want to share some things. You know, there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of news about these own personal choice. Now, if you have children that are minors, of course, our parents are responsible for their well-being. But as an adult, you have the freedom and the liberty to take care of your own body and to watch out for your own health. But you should be fully informed when you do so. So I just want to give you some info so you can understand things. And then at the end, I'm going to give you some scripture to back up what I'm saying. mRNA vaccine. And one of the companies or one of the groups that are associated with it is the Galton Institute. Now, if you've been following my channel and following my teaching for some time in a second, but the Galton Institute is, and also the Jenner Institute, and there's some others that are associated with this new Oxford, MRS to, getting the vaccine or which one you want to get, or if you want to get one at all, because again, it's your choice, it's your health, and so you're responsible for your own health, but you should do it making informed decisions. So the goal aspects of human heredity, these include molecular genetics, genetic medicine, genetic population dynamics, demographics, human evolution, elements of psychology, and the statistical analysis of for those of you who may or may not know, the whole idea of eugenics that became very popular around the time of Enlightenment in Europe and a little bit afterwards. A lot of these philosophers came up. So you had Charles Darwin, who wrote the book, The Origin of the Species Through Natural Selection, which is a genetic, is based on eugenics. I mean, it's the foundation for what they teach in school, which is the theory of evolution, right? Charles Darwin's writings are like the foundation that we get the theory of evolution from. Now, he had a cousin by the name of Francis Galton. And so Francis Galton is where you get, he was a eugenicist as well. He came up with the idea of survival of the fittest. So what they believe that when you talk about human beings, humanity, right? So in Charles Darwin's case, when they started to teach on race theory, and that evolved too. So let me give you a little background for race theory. So originally science looked at like geography and race. So they believe that most racial traits came as a result of geography, which is why people that live, they have darker skin because of melanin. And what melanin is, it's something in your body that protects your skin from the sunlight. And so in sub-Saharan Africa, you have a lot more sunlight, dictated that the people needed more melanin to protect them from the sunlight, right? In the northern regions in Europe, and if you went to like Austria and North Europe, they have lighter skin because they have less melanin. Also, nostrils of people that are in sub-Saharan Africa, they have wider noses because the air is thinner. And so you need a wider nose, you breathe in, to breathe in more oxygen. You need more air, more oxygen when the air is right. So that was the original, study of race, of the different, I shouldn't say race, but the different physical attributes of people. It was based on geography, right? But then they started this idea of race, which means that there were certain characteristics or traits that were passed down genetically. They also believe, because what they did was in order to perpetuate slavery or to perpetuate the idea of colonization from the Europeans, they started to teach race as genetics that were passed down, genetic traits that were passed down, and that certain races were less evolved. And so they promoted this idea, because race is a social construct. You hear me say this all the time. They start to promote the idea that because the black races were less evolved, they were less human, and they need to be ruled over or guided by the white race. And so this is the part of their science. would die out eventually, right? That's where you get the idea of survival of the fittest. So the stronger genes or the stronger traits of humanity would remain, and the weaker ones would be weeded out, right? And so Charles Darwin, Francis Galton, and some of the eugenicists believe that it would happen naturally through nature, but that it would take too long for it to the process to occur naturally. So they needed to assist in the in weeding out the weaker races, which is fast forward. You had people like Margaret Sanger, who was a eugenicist. You have the Nazis in Germany, the Rockefeller family. I believe it was John D. Rockefeller, who not only experiments as the Nazi, he was a Nazi scientist that did genetic experiments, especially with twins. So one of the things, and it's very barbarous what they would do, barbaric, but they would get twins and they would split them up, and then their Cliff Notes version of it. But to people, especially when you talk about the concentration camps and this stuff on these people, and they documented what they did. Right, it was funded in part by the Rockefeller family. Because they believe in genetics. They were studying genetics, right? So also Margaret Sanger, who was a eugenicist, she believed the same way. They needed to speed up the process because it was taking too long. And so that's why Margaret Sanger came up with the idea of abortion and birth control, right? She didn't come up with abortion and birth control primarily because it was just the right thing to do. She came up with it because she was a eugenicist, and she believed that the weaker strands of humanity, i.e. minorities, and she called people imbeciles, the weak mind, she called them human weeds. In her book, The Pivot of Civilization, Margaret Sanger writes that about 75% of school-age children, in her estimation, were defective. And so that's this whole idea of eugenics. That's why they came up with the idea of abortion, because they believe it was best in order and convince them to get abortion, and that they would encourage people with good genes to procreate, to have a lot of babies, and the people with weaker genes. And that's the idea of eugenics, which is, birth control, Planned Parenthood, and all those type of things all stem from that ideology. And that's why most Planned Parenthood centers are in or close to Black and poor neighborhoods, because they were targeting them to reduce their population. And you can read Margaret Sanger's books. There's a couple other public knowledge that birth control and eugenics were they came from the same basic Galton. Then we'll talk about the Galton Institute. Then we'll talk about how this polymath, whose life in Darwin and made significant contributions himself to the subjects of meteorology, psychology, genetics, forensics, and statistical methods. Many of his findings form the basis of modern experimental methods and are still in use in science and medicine today. However, he is chiefly remembered for introducing the term eugenics and for this enthusiastic advocacy of selective breeding in human population. Now you have this organization in Great Britain currently that is associated with the Oxford mRNA vaccine. And I'm going to tell you how this all ties in together. It's named after Charles Darwin, with the scientific study of all aspects of human heredity. These include molecular genetics, genetic medicine, genetic epidemiology, population genetics, population dynamics, demographics, human evolution. And I read this part earlier. The Galton Institute is a charity set up in its current format in 1989 as a multidisciplinary organization to address the many questions raised by the scientific exploration of human heredity. It promotes education and public engagement with not only the current science, but also with its origins and history. Galton is being a eugenicist, which is interesting because they named the institute after him and society. So it was originally called the Eugenics Society. And I believe, I'm not sure, but it might have been 1989 or something. They changed, or might have been early. Originally founded as the Eugenics Education Society, globally that actively upheld eugenic ideas, which were later discredited and rejected following the atrocities of the Nazi regime in Germany and other governments, institutions, and individuals worldwide. The current Galton Institute has disassociated itself from preservation of the historical records in its interest of improving awareness in the 20th century eugenics movement in the social and political context of the times. Now, this is interesting because although they changed the name from the Eugenics Society to the Galton Society, because Galton was a eugenicist, but yet part of what they're doing is they are studying human heredity and population dynamics and human evolution and psychology, right? And all those things are tied in together. But ultimately, if you think about the fact that one of the things from their website is they were talking about genome editing. Genome editing is one of the things that they are doing. So let me paint a picture for you. So originally they believed that in eugenics, they believe in survival of the fittest, that nature would weed out the weaker elements of humanity, but that nature would take too long, so they had to speed up the process. They had to help nature along, right? So now they're saying they switched from the Eugenics Society, which they're originally called, to now they're called the Galton Institute, which of course Galton was a eugenicist, but now they're talking about genome editing, which means instead of practicing eugenics, they are talking about manipulating DNA and genomes, right? So you may not be familiar with an mRNA vaccine. So a genome, in the fields of molecular biology and genetics, a genome is all genetic material of an organism. It consists of DNA. The genome includes the genes and the non-coding DNA, as well as mitochondrial DNA and chloroplast DNA. So that's what a genome is, right? So one of the things that this institute is doing conferences on is genome editing. That means that instead of just, and there's a thing, if you get a chance to look up CRISPR, I'll probably do a video about it. So what they're doing is they're manipulating genomes and DNA to get rid of the weaker elements of humanity, right? So in essence, they are playing God. They are trying to help nature along to get rid of what they call human deficiencies, right? They are trying to reprogram DNA. And this is from their website, genome editing, right? So now let's look at RNA. Vaccines are a new type of vaccine to protect against infectious diseases. Now, let me just tell you for the record that these things that they're calling vaccines are technically not vaccines. And this is out of their own admission. And I'll read you from the Moderna website, which is one of the creators of one of these mRNA vaccines. But it says mRNA vaccines are a new type of vaccine to protect against infectious diseases. To trigger an immune response, many vaccines put a weakened or inactivated germ into our bodies. So what happens is normally a vaccine, by definition, they take a weaker strand of a disease and they put it in a vaccine and they put it in your body, usually shoot it into your body. So what happens is, like for instance, the flu, a flu vaccine and then your body goes through the process of building up immunity against that particular disease. That's the same way with most of you probably got a polio vaccine. You probably got a tetanus shot and different things like that. They put a weakened strand of the actual disease into your body, and your immune system fights actually vaccines. But the reason that they can, they put the stamp of a vaccine on it, because a vaccine does not have the same medical requirements. They don't have to meet the same requirements as regular drugs do, right? As regular pharmaceuticals do. A vaccine has certain types of protections that they can use that they don't have to meet the same rigorous standards of many other types of medicine. Okay, so let me read on. To trigger an immune response, many vaccines put a weakened or inactivated germ into our bodies, but not the mRNA vaccines. Instead, they teach our cells how to make a protein, or even just a piece of protein that triggers an immune response inside our bodies. That immune response, which produces antibodies, is what protects us from getting infected if the real virus enters our bodies. So these mRNA, they are actually teaching your body, they are changing to a certain degree your DNA, right? And I'm going to read from the Moderna website, right? Moderna is one of the creative treatment. Here's what they said. Our operating system, they're calling this an operating system, not we're calling it a vaccine. They're calling it an operating system. It reads, recognizing the broad potential of mRNA science, we set out to create an mRNA technology platform that functions very much like an operating system on a computer. They're saying what they're putting in your body is like an operating system on a computer. It is designed so that it can plug and play interchangeably with different programs. In our case, the program or app is our mRNA drug. They're calling it an app or software, a program. The unique mRNA sequence that codes for a protein. Our mRNA medicines, they call it the software of life. When we have a concept for a mRNA medicine, potential mRNA medicine to another is the coding region, the actual genetic code that instructs ribosomes to make protein. Utilizing these instruction sets give our investigational mRNA medicines a software-like quality. We also have the ability to combine different mRNA sequences encoding for different proteins in a single mRNA investigational medicine. So they're telling you this is a type of computer software or programming that they are actually programming your DNA to do certain things, right? So I would just always tell people to use caution, because in essence, what they are doing is and what happens is, when we are introduced to germs, God gave us an immune system, and we are supposed to come in contact with germs because God knows that we're going to come in contact with germs. And when we come in contact with germs, it actually strengthens our immune system so that it will function normally. And so you should believe is why people are getting sicker, because their immune systems are being weakened. Also because of lack of nutrition, right? Most people aren't eating a very nutritional foods. They're not in shape like they should. And so when you have the proper nutrition, exercise, and you eat and you are physically fit, physically healthy, then when germs or diseases are introduced into your body is able to fight them properly, and it strengthens your immune system. Life, they're calling it, that will actually change your DNA. I mentioned to you how the Galton Institute that's associated with these mRNA vaccines, and also the Jenner Institute, and there's some other institutes that they were eugenics, which means they were practicing eugenics, but now instead of that, they're practicing genome editing, and they're using these drugs to do it. And so I would be very cautious in any of these things. So that's my personal opinion, and what I read to your website. So there's no question that these are absolutely facts that I'm reading to you. This is their intention. And so I'm gonna close in scripture, but I would just say to be very cautious, be very informed, and also to understand that these things make a lot of money for these corporations or these companies. But when we talk about Mystery Babylon in the end time, and we talked about this on Sunday in my sermon, and verse 23 of Revelation talk about Mystery Babylon. And the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more in all thee, for thy merchants, which are businessmen, right? Merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all the nations deceived. So that word sorceries is the word pharmakia, and it means witchcraft, which is manipulation. And also pharmakia is where we get the word pharmacy from, or pharmaceuticals. So it's saying that this system and these rich business people, these merchants, deceive all nations using pharmaceutical methods, or pharmaceuticals, and deception, right? The human genome, you are literally manipulating human DNA. And so I would just, hey, Adam Guidry, good to see you, man. So I would just encourage you guys to be informed, keep your eyes wide open, ultimately trust God above all things, and know that has been Joe Green, head pastor of St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church, located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Also the founder of the 2019 movement. Until next time, peace and blessings to you.